Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay? I think so. All right, great. Hope y'all are having a good day so far. We're halfway through the week, so that's nice. Looking forward to spring break coming up very soon. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I know it's most of our lunchtime, but we're very happy to have you all here to take some time to learn about what we're going to present today. A little bit of a presentation beforehand of who we are. My name is Mariana, and this is Tyla. We are both the WillCats DIAs, and we do these presentations every now and then about different health and wellness topics. On the presentation today, we also have Dr. Janet Besner, who is also part of the Department of Physical Therapy.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Dr. Tricia Burke. She's from the Department of Communication Studies, and she offered to help us today with our presentation. And we're very excited for what she has to share with us.
Hey, everybody.
Okay, and just a little bit about
I think you're muted.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So what is WillCats? WillCats is the Texas State Employee Wellness Program that we have. It is free for all benefits eligible employees. And a lot of things that we include have to do with exercise classes, nutrition classes, one-on-one nutrition classes, behavior change coaching. That's something that we'll talk about today as well as part of this presentation. And these education series are part of what we do for WillCats. So if at any time you have a question during this presentation, feel free to ask away, or you can email us at this email, or you can email us directly and we'd be happy to help you. We also have this QR code if you want to scan it, and that'll take you to our WillCats website. All right, but for today, our presentation is called Demonstrations of Love and Care. And what we want to focus on is how to have a conversation, whether that be with a loved one, a coworker, a friend, or maybe just helping yourself on how you can approach conversations about health behavior changes and maybe some habits that you want to help someone improve on. Now, that can be something that the person has already talked to you about that they want to change, or maybe it's just something that you've noticed that that person could benefit from having a health behavior change. And we're going to talk about how to have those conversations without coming off wrong, or maybe you don't know how to start that conversation. And so we hope that today you're able to have some plan that you could do on how to start this conversation and just feel more comfortable with having that environment for safe conversations on health and behavior changes.
Alrighty, next up we have, let's start the conversation. So have you ever had a family member or maybe a friend that's come to you and say, hey, I'm having a health problem, or maybe I'm not sleeping through the night? Maybe they've been eating McDonald's. I watched a video earlier today about this young man who decided to eat McDonald's for 30 days to see how that would change his body, change his food habits, maybe his behavioral habits. The first thing that we can ask, just like when we come to somebody, how are you doing? How has your day been? Maybe I haven't talked to you in a couple of months. Things like that. So you're not approaching them right off with, oh, well, let's change your health behaviors. More like, let me see how you're actually doing, and then see if we can base those questions off what your behavioral patterns are.
So that's the first step, just starting that conversation, right? Once you have that conversation started, the most important part is actually listening to what that person has to say. There's lots of different ways. I know it sounds easy to just listen to someone, but it can be difficult because your body language can say a lot about what that person feels comfortable, whether they can talk to you or not. And so you have to show, or you get to show in ways through your language and body language that you empathize with their feelings. I like some of the examples that they have here in the slide. That must be really worrying for you. Or what I hear from what you're saying is that you feel this and this. Is that right? So you're trying to show them that you actually hear what they're saying and you understand where they're coming from. And here are some tips for active listening. You want to face the speaker and actually make eye contact with them. Eye contact is a huge thing. A lot of times when we're just on our phones or in these kinds of meetings, you don't have to worry about making eye contact with the person, but when you're actually with them face to face, just doing that, actively looking into their eyes is going to show them that you're not distracted by other things. You're really listening to what they have to say. You want to make sure you're not interrupting them. When they are talking, just let them talk. And when they're done, that's when you can give your advice, or you can talk to them about what you heard or what them say. But just give them the space and the time to really get off their chest what it is that they're feeling and to answer the question that you had asked them, right? Another part of this, of active listening, is don't plan what you're going to say. A lot of times we have to think right off the bat, I need to know the best advice to give this person. But a lot of times they don't really have any expectations of what you should say. They just want to be heard. And so just listen to them. Don't worry about what you're going to say next. And don't judge them about what they're saying. And don't jump to conclusions. Just listen, empathize with their feelings, stay focused on what they're saying, and just follow the vibe or the conversation to keep it going, and maybe put in your own feelings on the topic so you guys can have a connected conversation and let it go somewhere that is a safe conversation, right? It's not something that you're strategically planning.
Yeah, Mariana, before we leave this slide, can you go back? I want to put a punctuation mark on something that you said, which was really, really right on. So it's really hard in these moments to not judge the other person. And if it's a family member, we are constantly judging our family members, right? It's natural, it's human nature. And so I like to explain it like this. Judgment and curiosity.
You're muted now, Dr. Biz.
I don't know
Thanks.
how that happened. That was so weird. Okay. So judgment and curiosity are two sides of the same coin. So think of it like that. In these moments that we're describing to actively listen, you want to be curious. And if you can stay curious, it's very hard to judge someone. If you can stay curious, you're going to listen really better. You're going to listen more. You're going to listen to learn, to understand, to sort of experience what the other person is experiencing, and it's very hard to judge. So I recognize what I'm suggesting is difficult. These are not easy conversations. I'm just trying to give you a tip about how not to judge, which is probably the hardest thing for everybody.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Besner. And again, if anyone has anything they'd like to share or questions, feel free to put it in the chat.
Alrighty, offering to help. We don't want to offer too much advice. Do you ever catch yourself? I know I catch myself when I'm talking, maybe something I'm really passionate about, and I talk forever. I talk way too long. Sometimes that makes a person feel even more overwhelmed than they are already. They're dealing with something, and instead of you offering the assistance that they actually need, you talk them more into the hole that they're already in. So be mindful that you don't give too much advice, and they may not be able to do anything with that advice that you're giving. Offering to help, this can be specific or it can be general. So maybe you don't have a background in healthcare. Maybe you're just a friend that's listening. Maybe you know an advisor or a mentor, or maybe even a supervisor that has this background, and you can refer them. Don't be afraid to do that. You as an individual don't always have to be the one that's taking care of other people. And then keeping it positive. I love what Dr. Besner was talking about with judgment. It's really easy to judge, and it's not so much with what you say as it is your body language. Mariana mentioned that as well. We had a case in class a little while ago. A young man, he was an alcoholic, and he abused drugs quite a bit. So it was an example, but I was telling my classmate, and her face just lit up. She was like, oh. And it's something that we do right off because we're like, oh, that's really bad. It's really bad. But when somebody is trying to tell you what's going on with them, we just have to be conscious of what we're doing and what we're saying. So make sure that you keep it positive. And if, like my mom taught me, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all.
Yes. I also like what it says at the end of that yellow box. that let them know that making a desired change is possible. A lot of times they tell you, oh, I wish I could do this, I wish I could change that, and they let off their chest, but then they don't do anything about it because they say, oh, that's just how it is, I can't do anything about it. But if you let them know, I'm glad you were able to open up with me about this, let me help you. There is a way that you can make a change. There is a way that you can be better. There's a way that you can start doing this thing that you want to do. So let them know that the options are out there and the help is there, and just let them make the change, but know that they have the help to make that change and that it's not impossible for them.
Yeah, Mariana, I think that is a fantastic point. One of the things you could say in that moment is, you know, I love you, if that's true. I love you. I care about you. I think you can do it. I think you can do it. How can I help you? Like, I believe in you. Communicating that message when somebody feels like this, they're overwhelmed, they know they need to do something different, they're not sure where to start, just to hear someone that they care about say to them, I believe in you, I care about you, how can I help you? That might be really the nudge that might help them get started. So now, if you offer to help them, you better be prepared if they ask you to help. So make sure that you don't say that lightly, and that, you know, you really can offer some kind of help, even if it's something small or maybe seems small, but letting the other person know you believe in them and you're behind them and you'll support them in any way that you can, I think means a lot.
Yeah, I like that. Let them tell you how they need help. Don't try to solve their problems for them. So all of this leads back to creating that safe place for that open conversation to be had. And there are different ways you can make that situation or environment more comfortable for that. And just think about specifically what that person, that friend, that loved one needs in order to feel safe, in order to feel like they can be vulnerable with you. Only you know. If it's your close loved one, you know what they need in order to be comfortable. And so that can be done in different ways. It all depends on the person. You can talk while doing something together. It can be an activity, can be in an office, you're working together, you just have open conversation while you're working together on the project. If it's your loved one at home, you could be in the kitchen making food together and just talking, or on the couch talking. It's easy to have conversation when you're actively doing something because your hands are busy, and so it's not as awkward sometimes to have that body language and you're occupied, and so you can just listen. You can talk to them about a health behavior that you're having trouble with yourself. Like, oh, I understand where you're coming from. I'm also dealing with this and this. So you have something to connect on. And you can actually even help each other to set different health goals that you can hold each other accountable on. And so this is a nice way to get creative and just be vulnerable yourself so that that person feels comfortable with opening up and just being able to know that they're not alone and that this is something that's normal, right? It's normal to have challenges. It's normal to have things that you're working on. And so just finding ways to create that safe place will really help you in having these conversations with your loved ones and friends.
Okay, you want me to dive in here?
Yes, please.
So, when you're trying to create a safe space, one way to do this is to try to have person-centered messages in your communication. And this goes back to one of the examples that Mariana gave a few minutes ago about the active listening, and how one of the examples was like, I wrote it down, that must be really worrying for you. So person-centered messages a lot of times validate the way that someone else is feeling. So they feel that what they're going through, they kind of normalize the experience for them. So these messages acknowledge that what they're dealing with is a struggle, they elaborate, they validate their feelings and concerns. And these messages also have high levels of nonverbal immediacy. So also, like they were saying before, you're demonstrating attentiveness, you're demonstrating warmth. Maybe you lean forward, maybe you put a hand on their shoulder, you know, things like that tend to be effective. You're maintaining eye contact, all of those examples, versus like a lot of people these days are like just looking at their phone the whole time they're having a conversation and half listening, and that's not very validating for when you're having a conversation. So making sure you're really focusing on the person. Moderately person-centered messages are a little bit easier to construct because you don't have to think so hard about the things that you're going to say to someone. You still acknowledge the other person's feelings, but you don't really help them contextualize or elaborate on them. And then minimally person-centered messages are pretty dismissive. So they basically make the other person feel bad, or like you're not acknowledging their experience as they're going through their challenges. So I have some examples on the next slide, if we want to move forward. Okay, so if you have a situation where you express to your friend that you're disappointed, or your friend expressed to you that they're disappointed their blood pressure went up recently. This is something it happens in a lot of people, and maybe it's not expected, and they went to the doctor's visit and they were like, oh man, I can't believe this. So a highly person-centered message would be something like, oh, I understand why you'd feel frustrated about your blood pressure going up, even though you've been trying to exercise more. Keep up the hard work. Maybe the next reading will improve. So you're validating their feelings about being frustrated. You're acknowledging the things that they're doing, and you're trying to help them understand like what will make them feel better moving forward. Versus a moderately person-centered message would be like, don't feel bad. A lot of people have a hard time managing their blood pressure. So you're acknowledging their feelings kind of, but you're not really telling them how to deal with them. This is, not unhelpful, but it's not as helpful as a highly person-centered message where you're really validating the way they feel and trying to help them move forward. And then the minimally person-centered message is, it's only one blood pressure reading. Don't make a big deal out of it. This does not validate your feelings. It does not help you figure out how to move forward. It is not really active listening because it seems really dismissive, like this person's making kind of a big deal out of nothing when it might be significant to them. So clearly the highly person-centered message is the one that's the most validating, and that probably will be the best for not only that person and the way that they feel about the situation, but also for your relationship with that person. They're going to feel your love and your care in that message because you're taking the time to think about how to support them versus dismissing them and being like, who cares, get over it, it's only one reading, like it's no big deal, right? So those are some examples of the ways that we can be really thoughtful in designing our messages and trying to help people through some of these difficult struggles that they might be facing with their health. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so another way to think about messages is looking at positive versus negative tones in the messages that we convey. So in trying to encourage loved ones to improve their health, it's important to try to use positive messages, which we've already discussed. It's important to maintain that positivity and also to avoid negative messages or dismissive messages that can backfire. So another term for these is positive social controls and negative social control. So some examples of positive social control are things like expressing positive emotion. I'm so happy that you're making time for your health. Stating the importance. Exercise is good for your physical and mental health. Making suggestions. You should text friend, whoever, Phil, and go for a walk together. Modeling. I made the most delicious salad today. I will share the recipe. And praise. I can tell you're getting stronger. Keep it up. So all of these things are examples of ways to infuse your messages with positivity and making that person feel positive emotion, making them feel like their efforts are important, like you're kind of on their team, you're making suggestions and modeling and praising them. So all of these are really good examples of keeping the messages positive and helping them feel validated and supported and cared for. And then on the next slide, I have some examples of messages that might backfire or that might be problematic. So negative social control are kind of the opposite here. So expressing negative emotion. I'm mad that you keep making unhealthy choices, or inducing guilt. We didn't get to have any cookies because you ate them all. Or bargaining. I will take you out to a movie if you promise not to eat popcorn. Invoking obligation. You need to be healthy for me and the kids. Or withdraw, which is just like the silent treatment. So none of these are good. None of these are messages that are gonna make people feel loved and cared for when they're trying to take steps to be healthier in their own lives. And all these are gonna make people feel kind of isolated and uncertain and guilty and probably frustrated with the conversation that they're having. They're not going to feel very loved and supported. And so there might be times when you use negative social control because that's like a message that's been modeled for you and you have a hard time breaking that pattern. And I would say just try to like catch yourself when you're doing those things and try to shift towards a more validating message. And if you do this every once in a while, it's not going to be like the end of your relationship, right? The idea is that you want to have way more positive messages to negative messages in your relationship. We might all slip up here and there and have messages that are not as validating or that are negative, but as long as you can try to be more purposeful about being person-centered and more positive overall, the ratio is what really matters for the messages that you're delivering. So I have a challenge for you if you want to think back to the person-centeredness slides, and if you can think about how you might alter those messages to be more positive. Sorry, I didn't get to finish reading that. I don't remember what it said there. Can you go back? Okay. To think about how you might alter the messages to be more positive and person-centered. So these are the negative messages, and these are the ones that I want you to alter to be more positive and more person-centered when you think back to the information on the person-centeredness slide. So for example, the inducing guilt example, we didn't get to have any cookies because you ate them all. What's a way of conveying a similar message to someone that is like, maybe they shouldn't eat so many cookies and they should share, but in a more positive way or a more supportive way? Does anyone want to take on that challenge? Or you can choose any of the other ones. You can choose the movie one or anything. Invoking obligation. So if I was going to look at the invoking obligation, which is like you're wanting this person to feel obligated to stick around for the family, you need to be healthy for me and the kids, instead of a message that is really guilt-inducing like that and makes them feel obligated in a way that's kind of threatening. Maybe you could say something to the effect of, I know that making health changes is so hard, and I really hope that I can do something to support you in making these changes because we love you so much and we want you to be a part of our family and forever, right? And so that's a much more positive way to think about that same thing. Like the content of the message isn't really, the content of the message changed, but the meaning behind the message is kind of the same thing, right? So the meaning behind the message is like, do a better job taking care of yourself, but the way that you've delivered the message changes from be healthy for me and the kids to, you know, I know that it's so hard, but we really want you to be part of this family. We love you so much. Like, let me know how I can help you. That's a way more positive way to deliver that. So that's one example of how to make the shift.
Dr. Burke, I want to hear you reform the inducing guilt one because I can't figure out what I would say in that situation. I would be really mad if they ate all the cookies and I didn't get any.
I know, that's a hard one. I chose that one as a good example right away. So you could say something like, oh my gosh, I know that you love cookies so much, and I know that those cookies are really tempting, but we all want to have cookies sometimes. Maybe we can bake cookies together next time and all enjoy them as a group.
That's awesome.
Maybe, I don't know, something like that. Maybe we
I
can
love that. I love that. Yeah. I was thinking along the lines of, you know, I really wanted to enjoy the cookies with you.
Yeah.
And just leave it at that. You think that might be okay?
Yeah, for sure. I
Okay.
think like the feelings part is the recognizing like how tempting it is. You know,
Yeah.
as I right before this walked through my kitchen and saw my tub of Trader Joe's chocolate chip cookies. Do you guys know those little tiny ones that they make that are like cracked? So I walked through and I grabbed 5 and I popped them in my mouth right before this. So like that does resonate with me about that specific example.
That's funny.
Or maybe you could even suggest like making them together and finding like a healthier substitute for put applesauce in instead of whatever in your
Yeah.
cookies.
Yeah, healthy recipe. Yep.
Healthy recipe.
Yep. Thank you. All right, so we were going to do some sort of demonstration. So I would love if one of the participants would volunteer to role play with me, especially if you have a loved one in mind that you would like to have a conversation with, that you're concerned about. Maybe you can play your loved one and what they might say in this situation, and I can play you and demonstrate how you might have a conversation. Would somebody be willing to volunteer to role play with me? Hopefully this is a safe space. And you don't have to reveal details about the person, but just their general situation.
I am very tempted to try with Dr. Vesner, but I'm also very nervous.
Hi, Amy. Yeah, so thank you. That'd be great. I won't, don't worry, I won't make it hard on you. It's going to be enjoyable. Can you tell us the situation, a little bit about like who it is, their relationship to you, and then what the situation is?
Yeah, very close to the example that we've been hearing from this session. So the loved one I have in mind is my husband, who is battling health issues, particularly with high blood pressure and diabetes, which is an issue that's run in the family history. Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so, have you attempted to support him and found it a little bit challenging in terms of how to do that?
I feel a little bit guilty. I feel like support in terms of mental support, emotional support. Yes, I am on board with those. But in terms of actual practical help, I may fall short due to a lot of limitations. So that's why I'm still exploring the options for us to, well, for me to be a better supporter.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So, do you want to play him and I'll play you?
Yes.
Okay. Should I start the conversation or would it be more realistic for you to start the conversation?
No, maybe I would prefer you start the conversation, which is a common situation in our family. You know, I'm worried about his health situation. So usually I will probably start sometimes with a complaining tone, like you're not eating healthy. Well,
Gotcha.
not that exact word, but that's where the conversation or situation can start.
I see. I see. Gotcha. Okay. So let's assume that it is a good time for you and your spouse to have a conversation, and there's no stress right now. There's no conflict going on. It's kind of a neutral period, and I'm going to start the conversation. What's his name, Amy, or what do you want to, what should I call him?
Calvin.
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 Okay. All right. So I'm playing Amy and Amy's playing Calvin. All right. So Calvin, I would really love to talk to you about how I can support you best with your with your health habits. I feel sometimes I feel a little helpless because I don't know how best to help you. And so I'd love to hear from you what would feel good to you that I could do, and what I shouldn't do too. That would be fine. But how I can help you, what would feel good to you, and how I can best support you on your path to getting healthier. Could we talk about that?
Before I jump into the role play, I think there's some contextual situation. A lot of us are familiar. A lot of the information I already got from this session. So usually in home, when we start anything or conversation, the context that my husband was always constantly on his phone. And that was very irritating to me when I try to address some serious conversations like this. So it's not uncommon when you are ready, you as me are ready to start this conversation, he continues to play on his phone. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's a real, I think, a real live actual problem that many of us encounter. And so my suggestion would be to ask that the person not be on their
Yeah.
phone at the time.
So I think we can roll back
Yeah.
to the role play that you're ready to start this and I was playing on my phone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and so I would just add then it would be I think it would be more productive and enjoyable for both of us if we could both agree to put our screens down and spend a few minutes just having this conversation where we focus on one another. Does that sound reasonable?
Sure. Give me a minute to finish this game.
Yeah, sure. So I think Amy brings up a good point that sometimes these conversations are best if you agree with each other when you're going to have them, especially if it's a spouse that you say, it'd be really great if we could spend some time Tuesday night or Friday morning discussing this. This is something I really want to talk to you about. And it would be helpful to me if we could both agree to not multitask or do anything else and just focus on the conversation for just 15 or 20 minutes. And so pre-scheduling that sometimes helps people. Some people might not like that approach, and that's fine. You're going to have to sort of trial and error that one. But if you can both agree to play by the same rules, I think sometimes that helps.
Yeah. So I'm just presenting a real life situation and where
Of
my
course.
frustration. So usually that's the case. I will patiently wait until he finishes the business and then he will put on the phone and say, okay, what do you need?
Okay, so I just am interested in your thoughts about how I can best support you to focus on your health. I care about you. I want you to be around a long time. I want you to be healthy. I want you to feel good. And I just am not sure how I can best support you along that journey.
There's nothing you can do. I'm taking my medications and we're all busy. We're constantly under a lot of stress. There's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you feeling like you're just like it sounds a little bit like you feel like a victim, maybe like you've been dealt with these health issues and all you can do is take your medication and there's nothing else that you can do. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And we don't have time to exercise. And I try my best to manage our evening meal plan. And there's nothing I can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'd be willing to make changes in our schedule, in our priorities, in our habits, if we could. If there were some health habits that you're not able to do now that you think would help, boy, I would be very motivated to prioritize those and to make some personal sacrifices or changes so that I could support you in engaging in those other habits.
you don't even get home until 7 o'clock. I don't expect you to help me or help the situation. Don't worry about it. We'll just try to manage the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm hearing a little bit of defeatism in your voice, and that's really concerning to me, and it's a little upsetting to me because I don't want you to feel defeated. I don't want you to think that we can't do more. I believe we can do more. So maybe you're just not ready right now. I totally respect that. I mean, it's your decision, it's your health. I want you to know, though, I want you to leave this conversation knowing that I would do whatever I could to support you, like to take some responsibility off of your plate that's family oriented to allow you to spend more time in behaviors that relate to your health. So I just want to make sure that you understand that. And if you're not ready to act on it now, I get it. I just want you to know that I'm serious about it, and I want to help if I can take off something from you to allow you to engage in these behaviors.
Thank you. That was very touching. I wish I said all of those things, but I'll start saying all of them.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to paint a pretty picture, and I hope my situation can represent a lot of the real life situations we're all dealing with. But I have been finding the conversation at home for this topic is very challenging in my relationship.
Yeah, Amy, it is hard, and I really agree with you. It's very hard, especially when it's your spouse. And I'll let y'all know that maybe Mariana, why don't you stop sharing so we can see everybody's face? If Amy if Amy went home and tried to have this conversation that she's had obviously multiple times that didn't go so well, and maybe included a little judgment. If she goes home and tries to have this conversation differently, the loved one is going to be suspicious. The loved one is going to be skeptical because all of a sudden they're seeing a different behavior from you, and they're obviously going to be skeptical of judgment. If that happened to you, you would feel that way as well. So you really have to do it multiple times for them to get that you are serious and you really do want to help. So don't get discouraged if you get rejected the first time. Don't get discouraged. Put on your armor and realize that maybe you haven't supported as well as you could, and you're taking over a new leaf and you're going to try a different way. Try it multiple times until they see that you are serious and you do love them and you don't want to judge them and you are here to help. And when they do say, well, could you do this? Boy, you better do it. You better figure out how to do it, because that is a huge gift to them, that they will say, oh gosh, they're serious and I can ask for help and this can work. But you've got to stay the course. You've got to be consistent and sort of swallow some pride. You might even say at the beginning of that conversation, I know we've had these conversations before and I know they haven't gone so well because I haven't approached it in the best way. I'm going to try something different, and I hope you give me the benefit of the doubt. Man, if your family member asked that, you would totally sit up and listen and give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, that takes a lot of swallowing of pride to say that. I haven't done it very well in the past, and I want to do it better. Please listen to me, work with me, help me, let me help you. I mean, however you might say that, I think that might also be something to mention. Tricia, would you have said anything different in that conversation? Would you have taken a different approach?
No, I don't think so. I think the way that you phrased everything was really thoughtful and like recognizing some of the challenges with having the conversations and putting the other person and their well-being and quality of life, like centering that. Is an important step to take, because then it's not like, this is what I want, this is what I feel, this is what whatever. It's about like, I do want these things for you, but this is about you and how I want you to feel and how I want you to approach the conversation. And so I think kind of like making sure that is a focus, maybe eliminates some of the defensiveness that someone might feel because they see it's coming from a really loving and supportive motivation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right on about that. If you make it about you, then they'll just get mad.
Especially if you said something to the effect of like, we've had this conversation a lot and you never take me seriously, or something like that.
Yeah.
Those are fighting words. Those are immediately going to trigger defensiveness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the like you always or you never, those kinds of language are
Yeah.
not recommended, right?
Yeah.
Because it just immediately, well, first of all, it's not true. No one can always or never do anything. And second of all, it makes them feel defensive. And so I'm not saying anyone's doing that, but I think a lot of times if we feel like we've had this conversation a few times and they're not being responsive, then we get frustrated and we get more
Yeah.
negative and we get more like critical in our communication. And so if we can dial it back, that's really helpful, even if we feel like we are talking to someone who isn't being responsive. We just have to keep trying new strategies.
Yeah. Right. Good. Thank you. Does anybody have any specific questions or situations that we could help you problem solve through? I'd also suggest that you practice this kind of conversation with other people maybe before you do it with the person you have in your mind. These are helpful tips for speaking to any person that you love, whether they have a health condition or not. So maybe find a friend or someone you could practice with. Practicing helps. The other thing I wanted to add is Dr. Burke talked about positive messages versus negative messages. And around that, there's a really interesting researcher named Barbara Fredrickson, and she leads actually a movement in psychology called positivity. And you can look at her website, it's positivityratio.com. And she's done research that shows that people who have 3 positive thoughts to every 1 negative thought tend to be more flourishing and resilient. And so for people who are trying to change health behaviors, which is extremely hard, and we know it's extremely hard because if it were easy, we'd all be doing all those things that they tell us to do, and we are all not doing them. So it's hard. So for someone trying to change their behaviors, it's really, really important that their brain be in a positive state versus a negative state. So just notice, do you have 3 times as many positive thoughts as you do negative thoughts? And if you don't, change that, right? So you are 100% completely in control of what's in your brain. 100%. Unless you have some horrible disease or condition. And so you can actually, when you catch yourself having a negative thought, oh, this will never work. I'm such a lazy person. I'm a bad person. Why do I want that chocolate all the time? Any thought like that, those are negative thoughts. See if you can reframe them. See if you can turn around to a positive thought. And just try to increase the percentage of positive thoughts you have throughout your day. It puts your body and your brain and your mind and your soul in a place that can more easily change and flourish and be resilient. So I tend to be a glass half full person, as I think many professors are. That's our personality. I'm sorry, I tend to be a glass half empty person. I'm very judgmental and critical. That's why I'm a professor. That's why I'm a nerd. And so when I first learned this, I really set out on a path to be more positive thinking. And I've really worked on that. And it's really helped me to portray more positivity, to I think, accomplish more, to be more successful, to be more effective. It's not easy, as none of this stuff is, but it's just something that you can think about. Try to think more positively more often than you think negatively. And it's like Dr. Burke said, it's not that you don't want to set the goal to never be negative, because a little bit of negativity is fun. It's, I think, good stress relief, but the ratio of positivity to negativity should be 3 to 1.
5 to 1.
What did you say?
5 to 1.
You think it should be 5 to 1?
Well, that's what John Gottman says.
Okay, all right. So we have some differences of opinion here.
Yes. Well, okay. So he says that in a romantic relationship, this is not necessarily about health messages specifically, but in a romantic relationship, you should have 5 positive messages for every 1 negative message. And that when you have a 5 to 1 ratio overall in your whole romantic relationship about all the messages that you communicate, those relationships tend to be more successful.
All right. I have not heard that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but that's not specific to health messages. It's like any message, you know, like you didn't take the trash out, you lazy bum, you know, like that's a negative message that's not related to health, right? So yeah, that if you slip up every once in a while, it's fine as long as you give yourself a boost in some of the positive messages that are like legitimate and genuine positive messages, not just positive messages that you're just trying to like tally up your 5 to cancel out your 1 now that you know the ratio. That's obviously not like that's not a healthy way to operate in your relationship either, like tallying things up. So yeah.
That's good. That's a good goal. Mariana and Tyler, do you have anything to add?
No, I do like that Dr. Burke said never and always. I actually had a conversation with someone the other day about using absolutes. When you use that, it makes somebody go left really quickly. And you don't think about it, because when we're having a conversation and it may get heated, we don't think twice and say, hey, how would this one word affect the rest of this conversation? So I really like that you mentioned that.
Thanks. I think the other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot was that if you're wanting to normalize the fact that the person's like struggling with some aspect of their health, and even if you can't identify with struggling at that particular aspect of health, but you can identify with struggling in some other way, then you can kind of like draw a parallel, you know? So I know you struggle to exercise in the morning. I struggle to like listen or keep my temper under control when I get frustrated at work or something like that. So you might not be able to draw like the same exact parallel with your behaviors, but you can point out something that you do struggle with, and so you know how hard it is to struggle and how much you could use their support with improving whatever it is that you're having a hard time with. And then maybe like inviting them to help you with that will open the door to them inviting you to help them with something that they think is face threatening themselves, like that they don't want you to be judgmental, but they want your support. So that's one other thing. So if you find a way to make yourself vulnerable, then sometimes that opens the door to them allowing you to do that too.
Yeah, that sounds really useful. Yep.
Well, thank you all so much. I think there was a lot of great advice given today. I hope you all have a plan now of what to do for all the loved ones, and if not, something to do in the future, because this conversation will come up one way or another in the future. But thank you so much. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us via email or chat on Teams, and we'll be happy to help you. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.